Well, good morning, everyone. I just wanted to say a few words before we had our discipleship ceremony and weave in also the theme of discipleship. It's always an inspiration to us all when new disciples come, is one way to put it, but another is to say when old disciples of incarnations past return to their discipleship in this life. And we know that that's really how it goes. It's amazing the amount of energy and effort it takes to actually get onto the spiritual path and stay on the spiritual path. And I don't mean in this lifetime or this lifetime only, because we see it manifested in so many ways. We may have seen it in our own lives, how we may have had little tastes of the spiritual path through different books, through different teachers we may have listened to, from different inspirations we might have had, and then finally we find that which is our own, and that power within us, that determination, that desire builds within us, and we say, I want this. And I may want other things too, but I want this. And I'm going to work towards it. I'm going to really, after a certain point, we realize that we are just on the spiritual path. Not that we're trying to find it, and not that we're finished, but it's not a constant sort of worry on one level, or it's not something new, like this is my hobby. It's just who I am. And more, God becomes our reality. The spiritual path, Master, these teachings become our reality. And the other things that were seemingly our reality, that we came from, start to take on their appropriate dimensions. I don't mean that they go away necessarily, but they become appropriate. After all, as I was saying for those of you who were here earlier, Master said to his father, earthly birth is something, but spiritual birth is everything. And Swami Kriyananda had a similar experience with his father. I'm sure there were many positive, supportive fathers out there, but these were two examples of the opposite. And in these moments, otherwise they were quite supportive. But his father was starting to criticize his preference of spirituality. And Swamiji said, I have great love and respect for you as my father, but you've only been my father in this one lifetime, and God has been my father for eternity. And he said, please don't force me to choose between the two of you. And his father figured out, read between the lines, and decided to drop it, and since then was supportive, or at least not unsupportive. And believe me, not unsupportive is wonderful. Is a wonderful place to be. So anyway, but we see it also in others where there's tastes of the spiritual path, but then that's all for this lifetime, or so it seems. I mean, we don't know the whole story. So when I say it takes a lot of effort to get onto the spiritual path or be on the spiritual path, it's stacked up over lifetimes. And so there's a statement of Isaac Newton in a moment when someone asked him how was he able to do so much in science and in mathematics, and in a moment of uncharacteristic humility, he said, if I have seen far, it is only because I have stood on the shoulders of giants. And it's a nice thing to say, but I think in terms of our own experience, you can even think that we are standing on the shoulders, maybe not of giants, but of all the past incarnations. So when we are, going for it, you can see the poor guy at the bottom of the thing, holding everybody on top of him, just saying, oh good, it's worth it. He's going for God. Get us out of here. And if you ever sort of wonder about that, no, this is me, this is my lifetime, not whenever I'm traveling, but sometimes when I'm traveling, and you're in a big crowd of people. And sometimes I think it started once when I was feeling tired or I was feeling tense. And so I felt myself inwardly wanting to sort of withdraw from everybody. And isn't it possible to just have, a bus just all to myself? I need a little space today. Would you all mind taking the next one so I can just, stretch out and so on? So that feeling of, again, wanting to kind of keep people at a distance, which I didn't like. I didn't like that feeling. And I looked, and at first I thought, what if all these are my brothers and sisters? Okay, that's something. But even then, maybe they could take the next bus. But then I thought, and I don't mean this in the wrong to sound egotistical, but I thought, what if all of these are past incarnations of mine? And I don't mean that the whole world revolves around me. That's what I mean. I don't mean it like that. But suddenly I thought, oh my God, that's myself in all these past lives. I wish I could say, I see the God myself in me, in all of you also. But I couldn't. I was having a hard time seeing the God myself in me. So I couldn't see it in anybody else. But I could say, what if they were all my past incarnations? Or not all, but some, a smattering, because we've been on the path and in this world a long time. Swamiji used to say he heard of some psychic who said to somebody, you are an old soul, very old soul. This is your 11th birth. And Swamiji said, it has been a lot longer than that for all of us. My gosh. Jyotishji calculated how many lifetimes it would take to find God. I forget how many he came up with, 78 million or whatever. And Swamiji said, where did you come up with that ridiculously low number? And so, it's been a long time. Even Master said that when Swamiji said, have I been your disciple for thousands of years? He said, it's been a long time, that's all I'll say. And it's true not just for Swamiji, it's true for all of us. It's been a long time. On the one hand, you can say it's been a long time, it's about time to get out. On the other hand, you can say it's been a long time. It's been a long time with Master. It's been a long time wanting to move towards God. Isn't that beautiful? A long time is a good thing. It builds up momentum. So anyway, seeing people as my past incarnations, I suddenly felt very friendly towards all of them, just like, oh, and how are you? And this is nice. And they're all kind of feeling just the same way I was. And so it wasn't that they were necessarily charmed by the experience, but I was feeling really thrilled because I just thought, wow, I'm so caught up in this life, this family, this name, this whatever, and look at this one, and look at that one, and what if that was me in a past life, and I was getting to see everybody, and so I felt this. I don't know if I'm making this at all clear, but it made sense in my own addled brain, that just the connection with everyone, and I was feeling gratitude towards them all, just like, thank you for helping me to get where I'm going. Come on the bus with me. Let's all go together to God. But also that, don't I want to get out now? I mean, isn't it enough? I don't want to end up in some train station in the next life and somebody else looking at me saying, and you were one of my past incarnations, thank you very much. And just, I want to get out. And remember, getting out doesn't really mean leaving. In a way, getting out means getting into the kingdom of God. Once a soul becomes free, it returns to earth again and again to help others. So it isn't as if we're even trying to escape. You end up, instead of being a part of the problem, part of the solution. We start helping others. In fact, we start helping others even now. Even the interest in truth, if you share that either outwardly or through your magnetism, it draws others. Think of how many of us were even drawn to this path, through the help of someone else. Whether it was the help of someone else saying, I found this wonderful thing, why don't you try it? Or it was the help of someone else saying, you're a real idiot and I don't like you. And so it drove us away from them and away from seeking human love and said, there's got to be something better because this love is no good. And God's love, okay, that was the love I was looking for. Swamiji said of Master that he was so sensitive, he could catch any ripple of thought in anyone's heart. And Swamiji had been missing him one day, and because he had been some weeks away, finally Master came back to Mount Washington, where Swamiji was. And he pulled up in the car, and there were a group of people, and he called Swamiji to him to get into the car to continue the drive. And as soon as he saw him, Master said, "I have missed you." Just very sweetly. And Swamiji said how rare it is that this deepest feeling of our heart is caught by another person and acknowledged in that way. How rare it is. And so, on the one hand, think of the sweetness of that, and on the other hand, remember that word rare. It's not common. So meaning, if it's sort of, why aren't you catching the merest tremor of my heart? It's not common. It's not common at all. You see, we have to really seek that love from God. And that was something that was interesting to me. I had a friend who was talking about how he prayed for others all the time. But then he realized after a while that he was kind of worrying about them too. Like, please heal, so-and-so from their difficult surgery that was so terrible and they almost died, and oh my God, I was so afraid, and it was miserable, and they barely made it. And he was getting all caught up in the drama of that again. And they did survive. They are okay. And in fact, it can be unhelpful to pray for someone with worry, because that worry energy goes through to the point where Master even said to some of the disciples, don't even tell people when you're sick, because you don't want them to send that worry to you. Interesting, because you would say, why not? I'm sick. I could use some healing prayers. Anybody? And that's valid too. He didn't. We have to always take what he said. If he said the balancing thing, why make a healing prayer technique if he didn't want anyone to ever pray for anybody else? But still, he did say, be careful of people sending you that worried energy. And so rather than, well, what can we do about that? We can't go on a campaign handing out pamphlets, don't worry about me, don't worry about me, don't worry about me, and so on. It reminds me of this cute scene in a movie where this son has decided to engage in a love marriage, and so his parents have completely disowned him. And so his father comes to him and says, goodbye, son. It has been nice knowing you as my son. We will never speak again. Here is, some dahi pakoras that your mother made for you as a send-off, the special kind with the extra cashews and so on. And good luck in the rest of your life. When you reach, New York, please just give a missed call, just so we know. And sort of, you could see where it was all, okay, we're never speaking again except once a week on Sundays. And, also on Wednesday, just to make sure. And, and so it was just that way. It was just very sweet. So anyway, we, on the spiritual path, my friend, I said, was praying for others, but in worrying about them too, he realized it wasn't the complete prayer. He got to the point where he even felt Master was saying to him, pray to me, ask me to bless them. Don't even say their names. Just because you're getting too involved in even trying to help people that way, rather than first getting strong in God yourself. And so again, if we find ourselves worrying too much, we have to say, well, but whose job is it to keep the earth spinning? Who's the parent of all of these people? Not me. You have to see which side. You say, oh, that's fine. I never pray for anyone. I only pray for myself. Okay, well, then maybe there's a different talk for that purpose. But if we find ourselves too much in worry, then it's time to say, Master, I trust you to take care of me and to take care of all of them, and help me to become stronger in myself. I just finished a period of seclusion, and it was a very wonderful experience. Master encouraged us to take seclusion regularly. Swamiji said do it at least once 1 week out of a year. I always am tempted to say once a week. I don't know why that is. In fact, Master said 1 day out of a week we should spend time primarily with God. This is the meaning of the Sabbath, if you're familiar with that. But he said have longer meditations and spend time with God. So in this seclusion, I was in Pune at our retreat center there, near to where Swamiji's home is on that same property, and I was able to meditate there several hours a day. And it was just a very charging experience, I have to say. It was one of the best seclusions I had, and it was easy to meditate in Swamiji's presence. in the vibration of his house. If you haven't been there, you think about taking a trip there sometime. If you have been there, you don't need me to advertise it. You're already planning your next trip. I'm sure different ones have said, when can we go back? You see, once you get a taste of anything good, then of course you want inora. And so in the same way, I have tried to meditate in seclusion in long hours in my own cabin wherever I was staying. I always had a hard time. After I would do it, but after a while, just the energy, the inspiration, I just couldn't keep it going. And so when Swamiji's home, it was effortless. Really. I mean, I've never had that kind of experience before. Just lots of hours of meditation, but that also helped me realize and remember why we do any of this. Because when I first started out, I was, meditating, and then when I was praying for this situation or that person or what's going on, and when I was not meditating, I would sometimes write in my journal different things, and, what about this and what about that, and okay. And then after the second day, or during the second day, suddenly I just started to feel happier and more relaxed and more, sort of, you can see the journal entries sort of going like this, and then then after the next meditation like this, until finally I practically just wrote God, and that was it. Just like, that's enough, because I was feeling that joy that comes when you hand the burden of the universe back to the Creator. And he says, thank you very much, and takes it back. In fact, I've been doing it the whole time. And we just start to feel that joy, that support, that protection, and that joy, again, that happiness that was in the affirmation. This is what happens also when we come to discipleship. And so you rise in meditation so far above your present perspective that you see everything again in proper proportion to itself. And the funny thing is we've had this experience. If we ever go up to some high point like St. Thomas Mount here or another place, you go and you just see the whole city. And it's amazing to see that perspective versus, when we're caught up on a street at a red light and the auto in front of us is not turning and it's just like, come on, some tiny little spot compared to this big, vastness of this city, full of life and full of God's joy. And so in meditation, that we bring ourselves up to that level, or God brings us up to that level, and we just can't imagine it until we do it, unless we've done it. And we can't even really remember it. I remember being smarter than I am right now. How did that happen? I can't. All you have to, put a little note to just meditate. And be like, meditate. Meditate. What is that? You see, we have to give little hints to ourselves to say, go back up. And so then, as soon as you do, now I remember this feeling, now I can see everything better, but there's really no shortcut. And that's really what came to me in this seclusion, because it took a long time. But eventually I was able to sort of rise above everything. And then from that state, it's wonderful. One other story about seclusion this way, Swamiji told, part of my motivation for this was Swamiji's story of one of his seclusions. He was working very hard and was very exhausted, and from months and months. And by the time he finally took seclusion, he was just too worn out. He just said, I'm going to just rest. And so he slept, he meditated several hours a day. Again, for Swamiji, sort of slumming was like only meditating 4 or 5 hours a day or whatever, but he in seclusion. But he said it was all half-hearted. He was just worn out. And so he got some rest, obviously, and got a break from everything. But then that relaxation that he had lasted, he said, about 1 week. After 1 week, back into his flow again, he was exhausted all over again. So when the time came for the next seclusion, he said, now I'm going to be serious. And he said the first day he spent just sort of sleeping and, kind of shifting gears out of that mode of activity into an inward one. And then he really applied himself. He just said, just meditating 6 or 7 hours a day, going deep with willpower and so on, and really up for it. Let me make use of this time. And he said that he was so charged after that seclusion that that energy lasted him for many, many months. And so, again, even if you can't take a week away, try to take a day away. If you can't do that, then ask someone to borrow your phone and hide it where you can't ever find it. And that way you can just say, I'm sorry, I lost my phone. I will find it again on Monday morning. But in this way, we can just separate ourselves and really take time to go within. So this is really what comes when we come to discipleship, as we say, not only do I want to go to God, but I want some help in getting there. And that's what brings us to the need for the Guru, and brings us also, though, to our own desire for God, for being serious. You see, if you don't want to, if you wish that you could fly a plane, but you don't really want to learn and don't really feel up to it, you just say, I wish that I could fly a plane. But when you're serious about getting in that cockpit and steering that plane and flying, you say, okay, I need a teacher. I need someone who knows, so he can guide me correctly. So on the one hand, it shows our openness and our need as a student in sort of a I don't know what to say, but basically in somebody who is wanting to become stronger, and so help me to get strength. But on the other hand, it takes quite a bit amount of strength to come to the point where we're serious to say, now I want training. It's sort of like a singer coming to a singing teacher, and this person has a good voice that they were gifted with, but it was untrained. And so now they say, train me in the precise techniques and help me to become a great singer. And so in the same way, it takes a great strength to come to the point where you're wanting a teacher, where you're wanting training, so that you can get out. That's the other thing. You ask the teacher to train you to fly the plane so you can fly the plane, not so you can always be a student. And the Guru is training you to become like himself. He's getting us all home, making us all free. So keep this in mind when we have this discipleship ceremony, that again, it's strength coming to strength. God's infinite strength is much more than ours, but we have enough strength to say, I know what I want and I know how to get there, and please take me home all the way home in this lifetime. So for those of you who have prepared for the discipleship ceremony, if you could come forward.